this comes from Lao Tzu. You know who that is?
Mm-mm.
He's basically the Buddha of China. So there's one monastery in the mountains where the oral lineage of the people who protect the emperor has been held, and there's 9 living grandmasters of this. Think Doctor Strange kind of stuff.
Sure.
One of them is Dr. Barry, who's a friend, and he taught me this. Category 1 people, they're always win-win. So you do a deal with them, you're going to make some money, they're going to make some money, right? They don't do deals where you lose and they win. And these are 5% of people. They're very unusual because they're always right. Then there's category 2. They're usually win-win. They want to be win-win, but they screw up. And when they screw up and you say, hey, man, that wasn't okay, they apologize and they make it right. So you only want to hire category 1s and 2s. Category 3 people are people, they are win-lose. For them to win, someone else has to lose, but they don't know it. They have a voice in their head. They believe their own BS. So they're saying, oh, I'm a good person, or I don't fail. They cannot see themselves failing. And if they are failing, they will blame everyone else but themselves. And anyone who's been an entrepreneur, you know these kind of people. They're always deflecting. They're always creating chaos, but they don't know it. And you will never spot them in an interview because they believe their own BS. They're not lying. They're looking you straight in the eye and they believe every single word. The only way you can find them is reference checks. And even then, are those real? Because everyone knows if you say something bad on a reference check, you could get sued for it. So reference checks are a little bit sketchy. And then category 4 people, those are sociopaths. They're win-lose and they know it. And they're experts. You're not going to spot them. So it's reference checks. And now in the 9 companies in my portfolio, we have a standard. If we have a category 3 that we hire without knowing it, and they make it through our hiring process, 60 days to fire them. And so far, there's been 3 of those. But my company culture is working well enough to say, okay, when people are not doing what they say, when they're blaming other people, they're not working as part of a team, they're out. And it's created a lot of peace in the company.
Do you screen psychologically people when you're trying to hire them for executive positions?
I have looked at various frameworks like that, and I haven't found one that works yet, but I'm excited about a new one. A friend named Busy Gold has a technique she thinks might work. I just did a podcast with her, so I'm going to try that out. And you've got to be careful there because you never want to use any information that would be protected. So if it's anything having to do with age or family or any of that kind of stuff, you can't look at that. And of course I wouldn't because I hire within the law. So you have to look at behaviors, right? And I have used things like the Kolbe test, which has been really helpful. Do you guys know that one? Kolbe, Dan Sullivan taught me that one. Dan Sullivan has been teaching entrepreneurs for 40 years how to have frameworks for operating businesses and coach me. Very powerful guy. He's, I think, about 80 now and still actively going. He's on the leaderboard for longevity. He's not planning to stop anytime soon. And the Kolbe score says, what are your natural instincts for how much information you need to make a decision, right? Some people, they have to know everything or they can't decide. Some people will decide with nothing. And then how much follow through do you have? Some people, like, you give it to them, they're going to run that project to the ground. Other people, they cannot run it to the ground. Maybe they have a framework and an operating system to do it, but it's hard for them. So if you look at those kind of things, you go, oh, if I'm hiring an operating person and they have no follow through, that's probably not a good hire. And so there's many of these things, but a lot of them are not functional. Some of them are functional. So I'm looking for the right one. Do you guys do anything like that?
We hire based on friends.
We hire based, I would say,
That's
off
really
of personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and we hire for aptitude, hire for attitude, train for aptitude.
That works when you're small. So like when I started Bulletproof, and today Danger Coffee is my new coffee thing. Just for anyone listening who thinks I'm still at Bulletproof. The idea here is that I would hire young people who had evidence that they could figure stuff out, right? So it's kind of funny to say, what's adulting? Like going to ChatGPT and asking how to do it and then doing it, right? It used to be going to Google or YouTube, right? And it's been that way throughout all of history, or you're figuring out how to do stuff. But many people in their 20s, when they're affordable, don't have the ability to do something without permission. So if I'm hiring, when I did start Bulletproof, my first employee was under $1,000 a month and lived in his grandmother's basement. But he was willing, his very early 20s, good guy, and just willing to go out and figure stuff out, right? So I don't know how to code, so I learned. Like, that's what you want. You find one of those, that's a great partner. And he made a ton of money when he left the company. The problem with hiring friends, you guys are going to run into this, is that I hire a friend now. 3 years from now, your company is 3 times bigger. And that friend may not have the experience that it takes. Because if you have someone who helps you get to 5 million, not that many companies even get that big. But when you start getting to 10 or to 100 million, there's only 17,000 companies in the country doing 100 million. So that's rarefied air. A mistake you make in $1 million company is not that big of a deal. You make that same mistake at a 10 or a 50 or $100 million company, it's catastrophic. So you start hiring someone who's done it before. And that means your friends, they're like, that's not fair, man. Like, I've been growing this thing. Like, yeah, but I can't afford to pay you to make the mistakes to learn. I'm going to hire someone who has the knowledge and they're going to have to be your boss. So what I do now is if I hire someone like that, it's like, look, if this is one of the smaller companies in the portfolio, understand, I'm not going to make you a C-level executive because we only have 2 employees. We don't need C-level people. You're going to be a director, right? And understand that when we do hire someone, they will probably have 20 years of experience and they're going to teach you everything you need to know, but you're going to get us to there and you're going to get well paid for it. You're going to have equity and all that. If you set expectations up front, good. If you don't, you end up losing friends when they quit because they're frustrated because they didn't get the promotion because they weren't qualified for it.
Yeah, with our business, it tends to be so intimate that we see people all the time.
That helps.
And so a lot of it is like, would I hang out with this person if we weren't working together? And if the answer is yes, and we get along and we're on the same page, that's what we lean towards, it seems.
You want to lean towards people that you'd like to spend time with because you're working with them, right? So you want people who you want to spend time with who also know the mistakes not to make. Right. It just depends on where you are in the scaling of the business. And having built several companies, in fact, I think all of my companies now are north of $1 million, and some are much bigger than that. And I've built, very few people have gone from 0 to 100 million plus. Every time I've had to replace almost the entire executive team at least 3 times to get up to that 50 or 100 million, because the people who get you up to 5 are probably not the ones who get you to 25. Right. And they want to, they're good people. They're your friends. So what I do now is I'm like, okay, I have a portfolio. So if you're a specialist in this window of revenue, why don't we take over to this company where you can help it get there? But someone who's really focused on just like juggling, which is the early stage stuff, they're probably not going to have cash flow forecasting and financial discipline and rigor to work with the CFO within, HR constraints and all the stuff that has to happen as you get big. So it's one of the biggest challenges of hiring friends is like, how do you maintain friendships when they can't do the job anymore, not because they're bad, but because the company changed?
How do you fire people?
The first time anyone fires someone, it's always scary. It feels terrible, and it should feel terrible. Otherwise, you're probably a sociopath. But there is a hack for that, and it's this. If someone needs firing, they know that they're not working out. So they are stressed and unhappy in the business. And they're taking down all the people around them who are doing the work. So firing someone is actually an act of kindness because you're setting them free to go find somewhere where it's a good fit, and it's being of service to all the people on your team who are doing the work. So I do my best to be kind and to say, well, we're eliminating your position. It's really nasty right now because you're not allowed to tell someone why you fire them most of the time. Because firing for cause is, even if there is a cause, it's a thing that is fraught with legal risk. So what almost all employers do now is they say, oh, we've eliminated the position. And then you do eliminate the position. And some employers will do that just because I needed to get rid of this person because they weren't performing. But if you try to tell them they're not performing, especially if they're a category 3, they'll say, I was too performing. It's your fault. Right. And then it just creates a huge amount of drama. So what I like to do is have a fair package, right? And when we eliminate a position, quite often we just didn't need the position anymore. And if someone is being eliminated for cause, then we tell them ahead of time. And it usually takes about 6 months of documenting and telling them and putting them on a plan and all that. So I have right now for my portfolio, my head of HR used to run a 10,000 person HR or 10,000 employee HR group because you have to be compliant with all the laws. It's really hard. And many small companies get taken out because they hire a category 3, a narcissist, or maybe a category 4 sociopath. And then the person's creating drama and chaos, and then you fire them, but it couldn't be their fault. It's going to be your fault. And then they come after you. And there's specific tactics for that.
If the law wasn't the legal barrier for you asking certain questions, what would you look for, hypothetically?
What I would love to do with people is say, let's be honest maybe even with a lie detector. That'd be fun. And just say, let's talk about your childhood, right? Like, let's talk about bullies. Let's talk about mean teachers and mean coaches. Let's talk about parenting, right? Because all of the emotional crap we deal with as adults is just echoes of the way our operating system got set up when we were little. So it's amazing what all of my senior leaders do. Their first week on the job, they go do 40 years of Zen, which is my $20,000 a week brain upgrade for executives and entrepreneurs. It's up in Seattle. They come, they spend 5 days. And this is an investment I make into my team. And they go through and they turn off all of their triggers. Because let's face it, if someone's emotionally regulated and they've done their personal development work, you can sit down and say, hey, man, you're failing on this, right? And you can say, I don't know if it's because you don't have the right resources. I don't know if you don't understand what it is. Maybe something's wrong. But can we talk about the fact that this isn't succeeding and that it's important? Now, that's a great conversation to have, but most people will respond emotionally. They'll feel criticized. They'll feel judged. They'll drop into first grade or second grade or fifth grade or whatever. And then they yell, no, it's not. And then you can't have a constructive discussion about it. So in some cultures, like the old Microsoft one or Ray Dalio kind of Bridgewater things, they're like, we're going to have these kind of hard debates and it feels like crap. I don't have that kind of culture. We have a culture of kindness, which means you have to be truthful. We're not nice, but we're kind. We're going to talk about the problem. And if someone has an emotional reaction, it's like, do you need to hook some electrodes up to your head and get some regulation of your nervous system here? Because we don't actually treat each other this way. So we're going to talk about the problem, right? And we're going to have constructive solutions. And if you're going to do the blame game and throw your emotions around, everyone has outbursts. That's fine. Are you a category 2 who says, I'm sorry, let's make it right? Or are you a category 3 who blames someone else? If you're category 3, you got 60 days. And that's how it is.